And we're going to give it just a minute for everybody to come in on This Is Not a Drill. And then I'm also going to share to my Facebook page. I'm live, I know. Glad this ain't no real show. So welcome everybody to This Is Not a Drill. We're allowing people to come on to the page and also starting to share on our own pages. We're going to be having a really great show. There's only, yeah, I get to do this now. Oops. So we got like 5 viewers now, right? Share. All right. So welcome everybody to This Is Not a Drill. My name is Melina Abdullah. I'm an organizer and co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, and also a professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA. And I could not wait for tonight's show because we have 3 of my favorite people on earth and most brilliant minds on the planet who not only generate intellectual tools, but actually do work on the ground. And so before I introduce them, I want to say thank you to Pro Bono ASL for being with us tonight, as they always are. Thank you, Mac, who's interpreting right now. Zena will be joining a little bit later. Thank you to Megan and Rajay for having the behind the scenes work and helping us to get this conversation going. Everybody is still glued to their television sets, or at least everybody I know is still glued to their television sets, trying to determine what the outcome will be in the presidential race. And we're absolutely going to be talking about this presidential race. We're absolutely going to be talking about the fool who currently occupies the White House. And I've been actually, let me be more deliberate than that. He is not a fool, because I actually don't think Donald Trump is stupid or crazy. I think he's just plain old evil. So the evil that currently occupies the White House and what he's talking about, possibly really when we break it down into very clear terms, he's talking about staging a coup, right? And so we're going to be talking about what that means. But also, as we think about the anxiety of what's happening in Washington, D.C., we're also going to be talking about state and local elections in the context of Black power and Black empowerment. And so I am grateful to be in conversation tonight with one of my dearest friends and scholars and co-authors and troublemakers sometimes, although everybody doesn't know you're as much of a troublemaker as you can be, right? Dr. Regina Freer, who is a professor of politics at Occidental College. And we've written together extensively, especially on womanist leadership models. And she is going to be talking about, especially, I shared with you, Regina, I want you to talk especially about descriptive versus authentic representation, the legacy of Black women's leadership, and what the Kamala Harris vice presidency might be. Also coming into the conversation is, now when we talk, now you don't have to go when I say troublemakers. Kat Brooks makes good trouble all the time, everywhere she goes. She is the co-founder of the Anti-Police Terror Project. The hyphen goes between police and terror. That's very important. Anti-Police Terror Project up in Oakland. She ran for mayor and will be my mayor, as regardless of who actually thinks they have the title in front of their name. She ran for mayor of Oakland. She's also the director of the Justice Teams Network and does work statewide on Black empowerment, racial justice, social justice in the state of California. So we're grateful to have Kat Brooks, who's also, I got to be on my P's and Q's because one of the baddest radio show hosts in the land. And so I got to make sure I'm a little bit tight with this one. And then finally, we have Dr. Greg Carr, Africana Carr on Twitter. He needs no introduction, is one of the most brilliant minds on the planet, but also just a really genuine brother. He is the chair of my alma mater, African American Studies at Howard University, where my daughter now attends. And so she's a little nervous because she's his student. And so I'm going to know what's going on in her classroom. And so we're grateful that Dr. Carr was able to join us tonight. He's usually on big time platforms. He joined us on our Facebook Live platform with just so much as a text. I'm so grateful that you were willing to stay up late with us too, because you're on the East Coast. So we really appreciate it. So I also feel like when Kat and Regina joined, I said, you two should be friends. I feel like all three of you, I don't know if you know each other, but after this, you will know each other. And we should absolutely all be co-conspirators as we try to usher in a freer world for Black people. So you'll know each other after this conversation. And I just want to kind of jump into this. And maybe Dr. Carr, you can kick us off because you're in DC. You are in the belly of the beast. You are in the space where, you know, this person has threatened to continue to occupy the White House regardless of the election outcome. What are your thoughts about what we're facing when we talk about the presidential election?
Well, I'm so glad to be with you, sis. You know, talk about a model for resistance and for intellectual work that is guiding the liberation, not only of our people, but really inspiring us and urging us on and showing us how to achieve a wider and greater and deeper humanity. I mean, and not just for you, my longtime friend, but also BLM, of course, LA, and counterparts out here are swinging with both fists. So we know that Democrat and Republican is just some ways political cosplay. It's a Democratic controlled city in Washington, D.C., but we know that the mayor and is not necessarily somebody who needs to be challenged to achieve perhaps a little bit better self. And Black Lives Matter is here in the street doing that. We know that the so-called Black Lives Matter square right in front of the White House, they put up what looks like an apocalypse now barrier around the White House, but that didn't stop Black joy from overflowing in the streets this weekend. And the current occupant of that taxpayer subsidized housing is, I agree with you, he's not crazy. He's not stupid. He's scared right now. You know, so you probably saw the meltdown about an hour ago, a little bit over an hour ago, when he came on television and began to spew all kind of nonsense. And actually, commercial broadcast entertainment media turned him off, cut him short. And, you know, anytime we see folks who we know are positioned to be the mouthpiece of capitalism, when we see mass media begin to turn away, we realize that he has served his purpose. They're trying, and it seems like everyone who was with him is beginning to peel away now. Anytime you see even Jim Baker, who orchestrated the coup of 2000, say that the votes must continue to be counted. It's like, oh, wow, these fascists are now going to separate themselves from Trump. I guess it's too late, buddy. So anyway, here, I just keep it very short initially because I'm really looking forward to listening to Kat and listening to Dr. Freer and listening to this conversation. And please, Greg, like you said, this is, you know, you know, we only use these letters when we got to wage war with somebody we don't like. So, you know, I'm very encouraged. I was looking at the ballot initiatives. Oh, first of all, congratulations, of course, by Jackie Lacey. I mean, California is doing what California is always supposed to do in this settler state, which is show us the possibilities of the place we live in. Congratulations on winning a number of the ballot initiatives. Can't win them all, but You know, folks getting their returning citizens being able to come back into the electoral process. That's a good thing. I saw the affirmative action piece didn't go necessarily where we wanted, but you know what? We continue to fight. Interestingly enough, Joe Biden, who we know, you know, we don't treat politicians as celebrities and kind of icons. They're not our avatars. So we know we have a lot of problems with Joe Biden and with Kamala Harris. And don't worry about Tandiwa. She's actually leading us. So you know, you know. So yeah, we definitely proud of Howard University. At the same time, we also understand we're human, and so it's interesting to see that the Biden Harris ticket, which Black folk and a lot of our Spanish speaking kin, particularly those west of the Mississippi, are going to drag across the line. We see that they've already won more popular votes than the people who live in Los Angeles. They've won more popular votes than 20 states in this country. And so the antiquated electoral college, which will collapse, or there won't be a United States if the demographers prove true, and by 2040, 70% of the people who live in this country are going to live in 15 states, and the other the 30% of the people are going to be represented by 70% of the senators. We know that's unsustainable. But I think what we're seeing finally is an event horizon. It really doesn't look like there's going to be a way for Trump to win this election, of course. My adopted hometown of Philadelphia, I lived there for 17 years. Them Negroes in Philly showed up and showed out, and the vote is closing. But let's say he gets Pennsylvania. Looks like Nevada and Arizona are going to hold up, but let's say they don't. In some kind of way, Trump survives. It still doesn't take away from the fact that there has been a critical mass of people energized in this country to push it one step closer to being renegotiated, the terms being renegotiated. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So all I would say is an initial comment that state and local power, we didn't win all the elections we would like to win. However, when you see what people have proven to themselves in terms of the ability, as W.B. Du Bois said in 1946 in his Behold the Land speech at the Southern Negro Youth Conference, the future of Black America is in the South. We see that people are registered, people are voting, and Georgia is now at the tipping point, thanks to women like Stacey Abrams and others. What we're seeing is that the first 2 years of a Biden-Harris presidency is probably going to be mostly executive orders. We're going to have an opportunity to push them very hard. So there'll probably be pushback based on we can't get something done, we can't get enough done, we don't control the Senate, or if we have 50-50, Joe Meacham and them going to sell us out, Kelly in Arizona may go right. Okay, fine. We're going to push the hell out of you, because now we have to start thinking in 24-month increments, it seems to me. 2 years from now, there are some senators that need to go. 4 years from now, similar. 6 years from now, similar. Every 2 years, we have an opportunity to continue to renegotiate the terms. And I think this is the election that's going to show us what kind of power we have to be able to do that.
Thank you. There's so much there that I want to dig in on, but I want to bring Dr. Freer, Regina, into the conversation to talk about, maybe respond to some of what Dr. Carr has shared, what Greg has shared around this idea that I think that we're all kind of on the same page. Nobody was going, oh, Joe Biden is the president that I want, right? Nobody was going, I'm a Biden fan, right? Some people have been moved by Kamala Harris's vice presidential candidacy. Also a Bison, also, a member of my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, also from Oakland. And so some people have been moved by her vice presidency, but most of us who voted and were determined to vote out the evil that currently occupies the White House, were voting against Donald Trump, not necessarily for Joe Biden. But I think one of the points that Greg is lifting up is that even though Biden may not be the candidate that we wanted, there is an opportunity to create pressure. Whereas under a Trump presidency, there wasn't even the opportunity to create pressure. How would you respond to kind of that idea, the idea of that being a tactic for Black empowerment and for moving us out of the state we're currently in?
Well, thanks. I want to add on my thanks for providing the platform and the introduction to folks who I can already tell are amazing, but I would think no less if they're friends of yours. I concur with everything that Professor Carr mentioned. And I think I would amplify this inside-outside strategy. So I wouldn't say that there hasn't been an opportunity to apply pressure, but it has strictly been an outside pressure, right? With the Trump campaign, there is some opportunity, but it is not promised or guaranteed with the Biden presidency that there would be inside kind of access, but at least there's a greater possibility for that. And some other things that I've been thinking about a lot are how the kind of moment has been a really important context for all of this, and not in simple ways, but in actually really complex ways. And so not strictly in a direction of how the movement, I think, has both elevated, educated, and engaged folks in around the electoral system as a tool. But also it has already started, as students of history know and understand very well, it has also inflamed backlash, right, that has shown up in our electoral system and in these results as well. So you see, I mean, we have to be, sophisticated enough to see both things are operating at the exact same time. And we don't have, full control of how movement politics are going to enter the political space. We push as hard as we can, right? But things get taken up by others and either thrown back or reformulated and refashioned in a way that they don't even look like they did when we put them into the political space. And I think that we need to be very vigilant and think about that relative to a Biden presidency. It has created, I am under no illusion that, a Biden presidency would not create some space and room for a bit more breadth, right? But, not much, my good friend, our good friend, Kathy Cohen says, the day after Biden gets elected, we go to work. Right, that it is not over, that the pressure, as Professor Carr mentioned, has to be applied. And I know I'm sort of kind of foreshadowing something you had asked me to talk about, but I think that there are some really strong examples of folks who played the long game. And that we have to think about what that long game means. That, as Professor Carr said, we need to be thinking about 2 years out, senators that have to go, Congress people that have to go, right? But think about the long game that Mitch McConnell played, right? That fool played an incredible long game around the courts, right? I can remember when I was an undergrad, and that was ancient history. The Federalist Society was starting their dirty business way back then. That's in the 80s. They had this agenda, right? Well, the benefit for Black folks and for freedom is that we too have had a long game agenda. And one of those is recognizing how electoral politics is a tool. It is not the only one. It is certainly not the one that is going to save us, right? But it is an important tool. And we know that now. I think we know that very clearly. And but there are folks who historically have told us that too. And so I think about Charlotta Bass, the first Black woman to be nominated for Vice President of the United States. We give you your kudos, Kamala, but you stand on these shoulders, right? And her platform, when she ran for city council, she ran for Congress, and she ran for the vice presidency. And when she ran for Congress, and then continuing on to the vice presidency run, the slogan of the party was, win or lose, we win by raising the issues. That's the long game. And I think some of our results that are around ballot propositions, around work that has been done by the movement around criminal justice, those are examples of our long game, that are bearing fruit, incredible fruit right now. So Jackie Lacey's departure being one of those fruit, but there are others in propositions that I hope we get a chance to talk about.
Right. And I love that you summoned Charlotta Bass into the conversation, because it's really important that we don't, that we honor, like you said, the shoulders on which Kamala Harris stands. But also when we talk about Charlotta Bass, we're talking about somebody who was grounded in not just politics in terms of electoral politics, but politics in terms of organizing, politics in terms of community-driven visions for what we want out of this country. And what year are we talking about when Charlotta Bass ran for vice president? Out of Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, she ran in 1952 on the Progressive Party platform. And absolutely, I mean, she, like, the brilliance of strategy, right? She took every single tool out of her toolkit and deployed it for Black freedom. So she was a journalist. She was going to run for office. She was going to be, you know, fighting vigilantes who were trying to get Black people out of their homes. She was, you know, she was organizing Black women to demand access to jobs. She, you know, she was leading protest marches. There's one of my favorite photos of her that you can find at the Southern California Library and online digitized, is of her at the Newton Station Police Division, where she is fighting a battle around police brutality. And this is in the 40s, right? So she's just badass.
She sounds like my friend Cat Brooks. Cat Brooks, does that sound like you to you? She ran for office. She was a journalist. She protested police brutality. Let's bring Cat Brooks into the conversation. What do you make of what's happening nationally? But Cat, I'd also like you to comment on this moment, right? So both Greg and Regina are bringing up this, you can see it, but the viewers can't see it. The motto that we've been using during this period is vote and organize, vote and organize, remembering that the vote, as Regina shared, is a tremendous tool, but it is not the only tool, and in many cases, it's not the primary tool when we talk about Black liberation. What are you making of this moment, and what does it mean for those of us who see ourselves as organizers as our primary kind of identity?
The first thing I actually want to do, I want to shout out the organizers in Georgia who are organizing their asses off, and the incredible work that they're doing to pull kicking and screaming that state to the purple, right? That shows the power of organizing, and particularly the power of organizing in Black communities, and seeing the backlash, the blacklash to the shenanigans that happened in 2018 with Stacey Abrams. But the other thing that I want to talk about, Melina, that I'm not hearing very, very much of, except for when I'm talking to other Black women, and that is, we woke up to a country, to at least half of a country, that said, I hate you, right? It should not be this close, right? I think in 2016, some of us were able to not give a pass per se, but sort of like, yeah, you know, that's America. And a lot of it's called, you know, Donald Trump's election, America Unmasked, right? All of the things that we knew as Black people were true about this country, that the polite ways in which racism exists in cities and towns across this nation, that he reflected that, and that all of America's pus and ooze and et cetera, you know, came up with his election to office. But now we've had 4 years of him, right? We've had 4 years of his hatred, his vitriol, his bad policy, his embarrassment to us as a country. I mean, things that you would think that good people would say, okay, I can't deny who he is. He's been unapologetic about who he is. He has embarrassed that seat. And they still voted for him, right? This was not the landslide that it should have been, regardless of how you feel about Joe Biden. Trump should repulse you enough as a human being that you should have gone running to the polls to vote for Biden. And that's not what happened. And and I'm put some of it, I think some of this is, backlash. I wonder what would have happened were we not having this election in the months following the uprisings after the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Similarly to, I think that Donald Trump in part got elected because of Black Lives Matter and Obama and all of the things that came up as white people desperately want to hold on to what they believe is their country. But what I woke up to was a slap in the face. I mean, I live in the work every single day, but it was just sort of oh yeah, this is still America, right? And actually America has doubled down on white America in particular, though we should probably spend some time talking about Black men and the numbers of them that voted for Donald Trump, but that white America made it very clear that they're doubling down on wanting their country back. And that means, and that's not a country that they see us as being a part of. And so for us as organizers, to me, that's the work. What does it mean to organize within that context? And that shoots us down to the local level, right? Because that's where people can be reached out and touched. And that's where I think even under a Biden-Harris presidency, our focus really needs to be on organizing our communities at the local level and building power city by city and town by town.
So let's get to that. We heard Greg say that he thinks Biden's gonna win. He thinks that, even though we're all kind of glued to the TV sets, that I agree with that. I don't think that Trump is gonna be reelected. I don't know that he will leave. But I do think that Biden is gonna be elected both by the popular vote and the electoral college determination. Do you have that same kind of faith that Biden is going to actually win, Kat, or are you less confident?
No, I do. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers and where the electoral college numbers are sitting, and I think Biden's going to squeak it out. I agree both with the popular vote and with the electoral college. We've been talking for some time, and I've heard a lot of people talk about, but Trump's not going to leave. Fortunately for us, the military hates him. So he doesn't actually have the power to pull off an actual coup. I do think what is going to be interesting to watch and something that will be unprecedented for us to go through is his ability and to utilize the Supreme Court to challenge the election results. And looking at, we've already seen some things that Kavanaugh has written that are going to support Trump in being able to do that. And I think that Amy Coney Barrett was very intentional in, it wasn't about the rules. She was being very intentional in how coy she was during the confirmation hearings. But I think she will be Kavanaugh's backup to elongating this process and playing out Trump's attempts to hold on to the presidency. I think ultimately he will lose that fight legally, because legally there's just not a stand, but I think that we're in for Trump shenanigans until they roll his orange ass out of that office in January.
Right. You agree with that, Regina?
I do. I mean, most legal scholars have, said he doesn't have a leg to stand on relative to contesting the election. I've been thinking about and worrying about what he's going to do between now and January. And he has this really uncanny ability to screw shit up. And I think that he's gonna double down on that, in part out of spite, and he is an ego and megalomaniac, but also because folks have pinned their hopes on him being able to do things that he has left unfinished. And so he will just, I think, take it to the very end. And so I worry about that, and I hope we can pay attention to that, because I think we're going to be very, very distracted by which is also a strategy, right? By the Supreme Court, by courts battling this out. Meanwhile, over here, other things are starting to happen that are under his purview as the executive. So I worry a bit about that.
What do you think he might do?
Well,
Okay.
I think he's going to continue undermining things that, are going to make it harder for us to gain access to climate justice, that are going to, make it harder for us to do things, even around criminal justice, right? Which he somehow claims that he is, working towards. But the justice system, I think, or excuse me, the Justice Department, I think, is going to become even more ugly and entrenched. And he much of that is going to be under his purview, right? So that, and he may continue to do things around judges. I worry about what he's going to be able to do between now and January too. So, as always, though, we have to keep our eyes on multiple balls at once.
The other thing that I think we need to keep our eyes on is not just, and this is what Kat raised, that we come to the realization that at least half of this country despises us, right? And at least half of this country is blatantly racist and specifically anti-Black. And I'm wondering, as we talk about this period between now and January, if the one to watch or the ones to watch are not just Donald Trump and those who have formal political power, but their base that was standing back and standing by. And so I'm wondering, Greg, if you want to come in here and kind of talk about the blatant and violent white supremacy that some people are projecting to be even worse if Joe Biden actually wins the election, that there might be even greater violence in terms of white supremacist violence, which again, we want to underscore that when we talk about white supremacist violence, when we talk about domestic terrorism, when we talk about things like hate crimes, the primary targets have been and continue to be Black people. And so what do you think we might have in store when we think about groups like the Proud Boys and those that Trump has directed to stand back and stand by in this moment?
Doc, that's a loaded question. I don't think there's anybody in the country who's any more intimately familiar with the capability of state terror and state sanctioned terror than y'all are. I think that some of these groups and quote unquote law enforcement are working hand in glove. I think that law enforcement may have its hands full if they activate, because they will no longer have the cover of legitimacy from their titular commander in chief. And then the right wing, the elected officials, the Mitt Romneys, the folks who are backing up away from Trump already, they won't have their silence to enable them. So I think the kind of collaboration between these deputized terrorists like the Proud Boys and others, it's going to be between them and quote unquote official law enforcement, those terrorists, is going to be more difficult to bring off in the next several months. But we have to be vigilant and go on the offensive. As you say, it's full spectrum. I love the way, exactly right. As you say, Echo and Cat, vote and organize. We know Trump is going to go off. We know these next few months are going to be a mix of insane statements, overreaching, and of course, the real villain of the piece isn't even as much Stephen Miller as it is Bill Barr, who has been waiting his whole adult life to do this. And this is his last chance before he goes down for the eternal nap to get his last swing in. So he's going to do that. And I really do appreciate you, Kat, saying. I was reading a piece by Umair Haig earlier, and the title of his article was, "They Want America to Be a Failed State." Who is they? Majority of white people in this country. I mean, they want to, in other words, and he said they're for billionaires, they are for guns, religion, intolerance, religious intolerance, state violence. They're against desegregation, civil rights, women's rights, healthcare, retirement. Anybody says they're not, look at who you vote for. You're against these things. And so, but I think we can go on the offensive. For example, out there in California, somebody's got to sit in the seat and fill the rest of Kamala Harris's term. Now, I know these sisters, I mean, this is an opportunity to go straight on the offensive. I mean, forget Nancy Pelosi and them. No, here's the woman we want. Who do you want? Do you want Karen Bass? You know what I'm saying? Do you want, who do you want to sit in that seat? Did you want Barbara Lee? Do you want, I mean, at this point, while we are preparing and bracing to defend ourselves, there are some targeted moments, it seems to me, that we can go on the offensive in this moment and kind of catch maybe some of these people back on their heels, particularly because I really think the Democratic Party, this is the end of it as we've known it before. I mean, if there had been an overwhelming victory, it would have fractured, because this isn't a big tent. It's a holding place for a lot of different people. And so had there been an overwhelming blue wave, you would have seen then the so-called squad, you would have seen Cori Bush and them coming in. So we got to renegotiate terms. And Biden Harris wouldn't have any place to hide. I think as close as it is now, you've got an opportunity for them to claim, well, we've got to get through these first couple of years. We got to really, okay. And in this 2-year period, we continue to build that momentum. We continue to build that momentum. Get Roy Blunt out in Missouri in 2 weeks as a Senate guy. Get the open seat in North Carolina. If Burr says he's not going to run, fine. And then in other words, be able in 2 years, I think we have a 2-year window to really come together in terms of the coalition politics and force that tool that we're using right now, the Democratic Party, to respond. But between now and January, we may be blessed, although there will be some pain with it. And I say blessed kind of, not really tongue in cheek, but we may be blessed with a demonstration that will make it impossible for white allies and others to do anything other than confront their friends and family. Because see, this is the thing your people voted for. And they are now off the leash. And Stephen, they're going to do everything they can on immigration. I don't know if y'all saw Stephen Miller doing this ideological purity test talk. He was talking on Fox News last week before last. Between now and December, we will get a preview of what they would have done in the second term. And that might be enough in January for us to then really rush this thing and use this as momentum to organize localize on the ground, so that 2 years from now, when any excuse has been removed, we just burst forth. Because I really don't see the Democratic Party coalition surviving another 4 years in its current form.
So I definitely want to pick up on that. And I want to do kind of 2 more things on this presidential race. One is something that you're lifting up, Greg, that always perplexes me. What is wrong with the Democratic Party, right? To be honest, 2016, they tried to shame and guilt Black people for not voting for Hillary Clinton in the same numbers we voted for Barack Obama, right? And my response is run a better candidate. Run a better candidate. You want us to vote for a damn Hillary Clinton? You want us to vote for, we had no choice really but to vote for Joe Biden, but we can't enthusiastically be voting for a Joe Biden when, people are talking about the 94 crime bill. I'm looking at contemporary new shit he's been doing. New shit he's been saying, right? He's not somebody who used to have kind of racist policies. He's backed racist policies recently. He said racist things recently, including during this campaign, and we keep giving him a pass because he's not as racist as Donald Trump. And I think that you're right, this is a moment of reckoning for the Democratic Party. We cannot keep, and this is not in any way to excuse or forgive Ice Cube, right? But we can't keep giving away our vote without expecting something in return. And that continues to be the demand that the Democratic Party makes of Black people. So what do we do? And I wonder if, we got the Worker Family Party coming up. There's this conversation about the limitations, I think finally real conversation about the limitations of the 2-party system. And I'm wondering what potential there is to either transform the Democratic Party, bring up additional parties, 3rd parties, 4th parties, 5th parties, or both. So you want to just hop in, Greg, and then I'd love to hear Regina and Kat.
I'll keep it short. You know, it's interesting. We were talking earlier in the week, the students, about this possibility, and we had some of the colleagues. And by the way, thank you for coming during homecoming and participating in that Black Talking to White question. I don't know if you, the conversation we had during homecoming, if you know, the video has been posted. I'll share the link, see, because people are watching like, man, you tore that up. But we had some elders talking to some of the young people. And one of the things that was mentioned was the fact that when we think of party politics, particularly our young people have often been led to believe that that always means parties that are running in elections. So, you know, if we think very loosely, whether it be the Tea Party or QAnon, it's incredibly going to send somebody to the national legislature out of Georgia, or like you say, Paul Wellstone, who was a senator out of Minnesota, who was a member of, I guess, was the Farmer Party, Work Party in Minneapolis. You can list people in the Democratic column and in their party column. And so that type of effort allows us to build political strength, build party culture without having to see it as something that would detract from building coalition or working inside the established structure. The two-party system isn't going away anytime soon, but the erosion, I think, has the potential of being very rapid. The Republican Party isn't going to collapse because it's the white nationalist party. I mean, the white nationalist party is a floating kind of signifier. For a long time, it was the Democrat, and the Democratic Party is the host. Then it moved to the Republican Party. But there's a white nationalist party, and they have an agenda. The Democratic Party's problem is it is the counter to the white nationalist party. And yes, it's a duopoly, but it's the thing that we have used, whether it be the Mississippi Freedom Democrats in Mississippi or the Lowndes County Freedom Organization in Alabama. It's been our point of entry to try to acquire power. I think, finally, if we can look to the past to give us some clues on how to use that kind of momentum, the MFDP and the Black Panther Party, of course, the Lowndes County Party, and then all the things we've done up until now, we can see that as this Democratic Party fractures and erodes, we can burst forth out of that host and have some momentum to build our plurality for what comes next. But in the short term, it's the vehicle we've got to ride until we figure out how to build those coalitions.
Regina.
So I mean, there's a structural issue, right? The two-party system, we have it because structurally it is about winner take all, right? And so we have to shift some of those structures, and that's going to happen from the ground up. That's going to happen at the local level. And so I would amplify what Kat was saying. That's where kind of the game is for us, and that's where the long game is going to start. But, you know, I'm not convinced that the Democratic Party is going to fracture much more than it has consistently, right? The tension that of the big tent has been a consistent tension, and the two-party system structurally determines that. But something I've been thinking about lately is what role Kamala Harris is going to play in the continuation of the Democratic Party's big tent, and how Black people are going to be called upon because of like the allure of representational politics to stand down, yet again, relative to shifting the politics of the Democratic Party. And so I'm interested in how, somebody mentioned the squad, I'm interested in how, represented, the new representative from Missouri, how is she going to engage and interact with Kamala Harris, right? And how are folks who are going to be pushing on the left flank going to be engaged? I am utterly convinced that Kamala Harris is going to be deployed and is going to see it in her long-term presidential aspiration interest to have Black people stand down. And I just want to ensure we are ready for that we are ready to kind of confront some of your sorors, Melina, right, around the adherence to Kamala Harris as some savior for us, and that's going to take work. That's going to be work because representational politics matter. I don't want to dismiss them as not mattering, but they also can turn asunder the politics of movement if that is where we keep hanging our hat.
Kat, what are your thoughts? I know you've had some dealings with Senator Harris. We've had her as Attorney General for our state. We've had her as district attorney in San Francisco. What are your thoughts on kind of the way in which Kamala Harris has been positioned and what Regina is presenting, how she might be used to try to get us to stand down?
So the first thing I want to say is shout out to the families. I took a lot of shit for calling Kamala out for her record, right? When it became clear that she was going to be on the ticket, and a lot of folks talked to me about my duty, and I was like, my duty to whom? To whom? Because my duty is to the families that I serve and work with, and you know, I hear Greg when he says that the Republicans are the white nationalist party, but that doesn't mean that the Democrats aren't a white nationalist party. But both parties are committed to upholding this white supremacist patriarchal system. Both of these parties are committed to upholding race-based capitalism. And both of these parties have done more than their due diligence to keep Black folks in our place. And I'm saddened, you know, I'll wait for it, but I'm saddened for the moment that Black people get reminded yet one more time that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And I don't mean to make it so simple, but I remember in 2008 when Obama was elected, I was sitting at an all-Black bar in Oakland. Those don't exist in Oakland anymore, by the way, but there was an all-Black bar in Oakland, and there was this moment where the returns hit, and it just became clear that Obama was going to be the president, and the Black folks in the bar started singing "We Shall Overcome," right? Or no, excuse me, "Free at Last." "Free at Last" is what they started to sing, and I almost cried, right? Because I was so clear that while yes, representative folks that look like us in power positions is important, and I think it can be used as tools. I think it can be used as tools for children. That's how I used it for my daughter when she was 3 years old, was her to see someone that looked like her inside of that office. And then of course I spent the rest of her life explaining why that didn't freaking matter, and that if she got to that high of a position, there were conversations that had been had that we'll never know about. But I think that moment will happen again with Kamala, and I think because Black people do that. We listen to folks that look like us in power. We do as we're told very often. I think desperately looking for some place to leverage some power to improve the quality of our lives, that does put Kamala in a position to run stuff, right? And again, it's going to fall on us as organizers to be working with our people to prepare them for that moment, to figure out what the campaigns are. I like what Dr. Carr said about being on the offensive. Where are the openings that we can take now? I want us to immediately start pushing her on criminal justice reform and policing. She talked a lot of mess, right? She said a lot of stuff on this campaign trail that are in direct contradiction to almost everything she said is and she was top cop. I think there's an opportunity then there for us to launch campaigns and jump on us now. Where are the corners that we can back her into before she can back us into one? And then can I just say, Melina, you know, I would love sometime in my lifetime to walk into a voting booth and be able to be voting without vomit in my mouth, right? And I get angry every single election cycle that I'm in yet one more position where I have to pick between the lesser of two evils. Being clear that for me as a Black person, they are literally the lesser of two evils, because neither of them have an agenda that has anything to do with my liberation. And I feel bad sometimes talking about it because it's not the work that I do, right? I do it on a very minuscule level, electoral politics. I'm not the person that's going to get out there and do the work that needs to be done in order to adequately build another party. And I do think we need more than just a third party. I think we need to be looking like Puerto Rico, right? We need 4, 5, 6, and grades of progressiveness, grades of moderation, grades of even conservatism, right? So that folks feel like they have different places to be, but somebody's got to do that work. And unlike the Green Party, somebody's got to pay attention to the Black and brown folks when they're doing that work, because that's what's not happening, right? The Green Party is out here sniveling about this, that, and the third, but they're not talking to the people that actually can make a difference at the ballot box.
Right. There's so much I want to kind of zero in on, but I think that you're making really, really good points. And especially when we talk about, initially, I was hopeful around the Democratic Party, right? This time around, right? When we looked at who was on the initial stage during the primaries, right? We had a Julian Castro, right? We had, he really got me excited. We had a Bernie Sanders who needed to be schooled on racial politics, but at least had a vision that was a contrast, not just a minor tweaking, right, around what he was trying to usher in. And like you said, when I went in to vote, and I'm one of those people who still likes to go and actually vote in person, even though all of California got vote by mail ballots. I still went in on election day and voted. I just couldn't do it. And my mother, now I can say it because my mother said, be quiet about it. And I kept going, but Ma, I really do have a PhD in political science. I really do know that in a state like California, I don't have to vote for the Democratic Party. But she was like, be quiet because other people might, vote the wrong way. So now it's over. So I can say, I did not vote for Joe Biden. I wrote in my candidate because I just couldn't. I thought about the Fannie Lou Hamer image that was on my shirt and the quote that was there that said, we have to build our own power. And Joe Biden is not our own power, even though, I can ski wee with Kamala Harris. That's not enough to make me vote for that ticket. And so I wrote it in because I felt like I couldn't wear Fannie Lou Hamer's image and then vote for Joe Biden and definitely, Donald Trump and none of those people. We even had Kanye.
You didn't vote for Kanye?
Kanye. Couldn't do that either. But I want to talk about all of that, but we only have 10 minutes left. And I also want to remind folks, and this is one of the things that we did, Black Lives Matter did a lot of work getting people out to the polls. And one of the things that we said as we talked to people in places like Willowbrook and Compton, where Dijon Kazee was just murdered by LA County sheriffs, and Frederick Williams was just murdered by LA County sheriffs. And the brother that they killed inside UCLA Harbor Medical Center died on election day of those gunshot wounds, right? When we were talking to people in the neighborhood, we couldn't get them in good conscience. We couldn't say, you got to go vote for Joe Biden. But what we did say is we got to get Jackie Lacey's ass out of office. And we're so encouraged that there became an entire campaign, and we can't claim it, but there was an entire campaign of Crips and Bloods who decided to come together and say, we got to go to the ballot box. And one of the things that they said is, who affects Crips and Bloods is Jackie Lacey. And we got to get her out. And we voted her out. Over the $10 million spent by police associations, the people voted her out on Tuesday. And so how does that, when we talk about down ballot items, right? The ability to get Jackie Lacey out, the ability to pass Measure J, the ability to restore voting rights to formerly incarcerated people by passing Prop 17. What does that mean for us, Regina?
I'm really glad you brought that all together, because I think it's really important to think about it as a package that came through the role of the movement, right? That, and again, this long game, right? Critical resistance lifted up this type of revolution for us, right? In the early 90s. And we are now seeing the fruits of the continuous movement around that. And that's how we have to think, right? So if you look, restoring, folks with felonies ability to vote, the fact that we have Measure J, even money bail, right? In some ways, whichever way that one went, there was an imprint of movement politics there. Now, that one was a complex one and that one was a problematic one, but still there was this imprint there, right, of the movement. And so I think that is a huge victory, and we need those victories, and they're not solely going to come through electoral politics, but, for folks in the movement, if you keep losing, that's debilitating. And so we need this. And I'm really glad you talked about it in terms of that package. So it's from the candidates to the propositions. There was a sweep relative to this type of addressing the criminal injustice system. And that's the power of the people, right? For sure.
And Greg, you mentioned that it echoed all the way over to where you are in Washington, D.C. You're lifting up all of these things that happened in California. I know that we're friends, but beyond that, it must have gotten to you some other way. How did you get wind of what was happening in California and how we defeated this district attorney here, how we passed some of these ballot measures here?
Well, I mean, in addition to it being a topic, progressive spaces, it was a topic in Black spaces and independent Black spaces, to the degree that we can talk about any of this surveillance technology as being independent, right? So, I mean, like Roland Martin, for example, had Carl Douglas on, who's friends with Jackie Lacey, but wouldn't defend her in the face of being peppered with questions about what. And then, of course, you came into the space and one night, Roland Martin and Phil, it's so very important that we look away from this mass commercial media. And so the message was, the drum was being beaten across the country, and of course through the technology outside of the country as well. I think y'all probably made Jackie Lacey famous, but not in the way that she would want to be famous, But I'm so grateful to hear this conversation about, what we do now to press the advantage we have. For honestly, I don't know that Kamala Harris can win a presidential election. I don't know that she can win a presidential primary. If Georgia turns blue, the hero of that narrative has already been put in place, Stacey Abrams. If Abrams comes back in 2 years and beats the illegitimate governor of Georgia like a drum, then Kamala Harris gets primaried. And she doesn't get primaried from the left in terms of a Stacey Abrams as the champion of grassroots organizing and activism. Stacey Abrams becomes a proxy for the kind of work that y'all did. I mean, she's like the vetted, legitimate version, the left version against Kamala Harris. And I just don't see Kamala Harris being able to survive a primary, quite frankly. And not with not what she has now. And I guess what I'm saying is that I think 2024 looks very different than 2020. And a lot of that's going to have to do with 2022. And so now, of course, you got to press Gaskin, who, now he's got to be pressed. Now you got to move forward. But to talk about Crips and Bloods coming to vote, this is the model. This is the local model. And in those kind of down ballot races, beat big money. All the money that went into South Carolina trying to get Jamie Harrison to win, he got crushed. But guess what? In 2022, he might come back and run for the governor of South Carolina. He's an establishment guy. But Ilhan Omar has the model. Go expand the electorate. Go get those cats that don't vote. And they came to the poll. And so I think because of the model of what y'all just did in LA, as word gets out, that becomes, that's the playbook. I think it's going to be a lot of people fall between now and 2024 using that kind of energy and that kind of organizational strategy. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Kat, one of the things that we did is say, we're not going to try to water it down. We're going to deepen our base of support. So we didn't keep going out to the white supremacist spaces. We said we're going to stay in South Central. We're going to go out to Lancaster and Palmdale, where Black people have been pushed out to, and that's where we're going to generate support. What do you think about that model of deepening our bases of support, really standing firm in what it is we believe and winning that way? Is that a strategy that can work?
Absolutely. And we just saw that play out here in Oakland with the election of Carol Fife to the District 3 City Council seat. And really what got elected to that seat is movement. And we were able to, we've been running these campaigns, right? Defund OPD, the Moms for Housing. Carol's the mastermind behind the Moms for Housing movement. And because it was in a district, she was able to localize and go deep and be unapologetic about her messaging, right? Being unapologetic about being Black, being unapologetic about standing for renters, being unapologetic about talking about defund OPD, and then having those conversations, right, with voters, which the way candidates were able to do this in the midst of this pandemic too is fascinating. But that's exactly what happened here, is just went deeper inside of the district, got more clear about the messaging, more clear about how the policy planks would actually been enacted. And it gave folks in our district something to hang on to. And the establishment tried it. The mayor cajoled, tried to manipulate, call, intimidate. She called the entire, every single member of the Alameda County Democratic Party, the mayor personally, to try to prevent the endorsement of Fife. And they could not beat back organizing. They could not beat back strong messaging. They could not beat back the ability to capitalize on this particular political moment. And when I say beat, I mean, she got twomped. She twomped a 2-term incumbent. And that's almost unheard of, as you know.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm getting all kinds of texts and messages that we're at 8 p.m. So we're really out of time, but I want to thank all of you for joining us on This Is Not a Drill. Dr. Regina Freer, again, is professor of politics at Occidental College. How can people keep up with you, Regina? And any last words?
Well, you know, I'm old school, so they're going to have to email me.
rfreer@oxy.edu.
That's right.
Yes, that I remember. I know your Yahoo one too by heart. rfreer@oxy.edu. I'm just giving the public one. rfreer@oxy.edu. Any last words before we sign off?
Well, there's so much that we didn't get to talk about. I wanted to talk about Prop 16 and how white folks put the BLM, you know, Black Lives Matter in their window and then voted against Black life. You know, there's so much to talk about. So I hope we have the opportunity to do more of this.
Absolutely. Prop 16 would have restored affirmative action in the state of California, and looks like it's headed for defeat because white folks wouldn't vote for it, because they were able to get a message out that somehow racial equity isn't necessary when we talk about, but when we look at our school systems, we have 3% Black in the UC and CSU systems, declining numbers even in the community colleges, and we can't usher in racial equity in California. So you're right, you want to put up a sign, but you don't want to vote for Black life. Absolutely. Kat, how can people keep up with the last words?
Yep. So I'm on Twitter at Kat's Commentary and on Insta as at The Real Kat Brooks. And the message that's been on my heart really for my people and will continue to be, because what I didn't get to say is that racial reckoning that we're seeing as these voting are playing out, how that is going to translate into the streets over the next few months. Right? Like, what is that going to mean for violence against our bodies and in our communities? And, you know, we're in a mode of resistance. And so what's been on my heart for people is to be smart and to be safe and to be strategic, right? And take it seriously, right? Take yourself seriously, take what these fools are saying seriously. You know, security is 99% prevention, and 99% of the time you're going to be just fine. But be prepared for that 1%. And yeah, take care of yourselves and take care of each other, because as a Black person, I'm not feeling very safe in America tonight. And I think that's going to increase, and the Orange Dude is going to rile up those acts of violence over the next few months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Stand together. Thank you so much, Kat Brooks. Dr. Carr, what you got for us as we close out?
Gratitude for you all, for your work, for your example. And Kat, thank you. Smart, strategic, safe, and serious. I love those 4 S's. I need to keep that first and foremost, because he about to wild out. But in many ways, this white on white violence, and you're right with these BLM signs. It's like, is this some kind of woke cosplay or kind of fetish kink kind of thing? Y'all got the black sign up, and then, you know, but ultimately, when he shows out, let the cousins fight. In other words, don't jump down in the middle of this fight and let them, if y'all want to call yourselves fighting for the soul of America, go right ahead, because that's never been our priority. Our priority has always been to advance our interests together, collectively, and with whatever allies we could rustle up and move forward in a common humanity. That was always our priority. We don't vote as an act of patriotism. Sometimes we vote as an act of, most of the time, as an act of self-defense. And so, you know, this is a time for us to go on the offensive. But I love those 4 S's, Kat. I'm putting that, listen, that's the mantra. And I'm gonna cite you too: smart, strategic, safe, and serious. And thanks y'all for letting me hang out with y'all a little bit. And yeah, let's do this again right quick. Dr. Mel. We need this. We need this space. Thank you for inviting me into the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining in on Twitter. You are Africana Carr, right? Africana Carr on Twitter. Thank you so much, Dr. Regina Freer, the real Cat Brooks. Dr. Greg Carr, thank you for joining, and thank you mostly for all of your work for the liberation of our people, for honoring our ancestors with your spirits and your labor. We want to thank Pro Bono ASL for always joining and making us accessible. Thank you to Megan and Rajay for having us behind the scenes. Thank you to the entire Black Lives Matter crew. And we want you to join us every Thursday. We'll be back, inshallah, next Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on This Is Not a Drill. And when we say vote and organize, we mean like now. So join us on Sunday at 7 p.m. for our Black Lives Matter general meeting at McCarty Memorial Church, Sunday, 7 p.m. at McCarty Memorial Church on Adams as we organize. Last thing I want to say is already George Gascon is on notice. He's reached out about 4 or 5 times since the election. We have our first public meeting with him on Monday night at 7 p.m. He said he didn't want to waste any time. And we tried for 8 years with Jackie Lacey to get a public meeting. She said, no, George Gascon isn't even in office, but we told him we're going to hold him accountable too. So he said, Monday night, how soon can we do the meeting? So our first meeting is Monday night at 7 p.m., but join us Sunday at 7, McCarty Memorial Church for our organizing meeting. Again, thank you so much to everybody. This is not a drill. We'll see you next Thursday right back here on Facebook Live. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.